Hi, I'm Emily Carroll, an environmental studies student from the University of St. Thomas, and for my senior project, I did Adolescents, Rehabilitation, and the Buffalo Commons. Just to start with a little outline, I'm going to go over importance or my abstract, a little bit of background on the Buffalo Commons, nature deficit disorder, the Great Plains Restoration Council, and Northwest Passage, and also kind of why I picked the criteria I did, my big question, my data sources, GIS maps and data, and kind of what they show and imply, conclusions, and then future, what's next. To get my project in a nutshell, it focuses on rehabilitating the environment and also rehabilitating people. It focuses on addressing nature deficit disorder by involving young adults in large-scale rewilding efforts. Two groups in particular that focus on these issues are the Great Plains Restoration Council and Northwest Passage. The key is to find an equal playing ground for rehabilitating both people and the land. While utilizing GIS software, this presentation will bring together the efforts of both groups and will provide a proposal for Buffalo Commons locations. Target locations will include large areas in the Great Plains that have the most adolescents, wilderness, and are near low-income communities. These criteria will target young adults that need the most help and will provide locations where adolescents will not only get the therapy and active participation they need, but also help the environment learn social skills and develop an appreciation and respect for conserving our limited resources. They can also become a new voice in the battle against time and degradation. Just to start with the Buffalo Commons term, from the article The Great Plains from Dust to Dust and the article The Onset of the Buffalo Commons by Frank and Deborah Popper, they coined the term Buffalo Commons to signify large-scale restoration that is to take place in the Great Plains. It aims to revert the degraded land back to its original state by bringing back buffalo. Unlike Frank and Deborah Popper, this project would not only rewild degraded areas in the Great Plains, but rehabilitate people too by having people rewild the land instead of the buffalo. Along with the idea of rehabilitating the Buffalo Commons, there is need to address nature deficit disorder. In the book Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv, he states the children and nature movement is fueled by this fundamental idea. The child in nature is an endangered species, and the health of children and the health of the earth are inseparable. He continues on to say that several of these studies suggest that thoughtful exposure of youngsters to nature can even be a powerful form of therapy for attention deficit disorders and other maladies. Nature offers healing for a child living in a destructive family or neighborhood. In addition to Louv's discoveries, a study at the University of Kansas found that young people who backpacked for 3 days showed higher cognitive abilities and higher creativity. Also, the National Geographic found people in hospitals who can see a natural landscape have been shown to get better faster. This may not be a clinical diagnosis, but it seems to describe a new problem we face today. Study after study supports the fact that people benefit from being outside in nature. It helps us acknowledge this change and start making a difference. The multifaceted purpose of rehabilitating the Buffalo Commons for areas that later maps will single out is the sole purpose of this project. Starting with one of the major groups, the Great Plains Restoration Council. They work to restore and protect our damaged prairies and plains through developing youth leaders in ecological health. Protecting wild nature is a matter of public health, and participating in its hands-on recovery offers therapeutic modalities for many social and physical ills. They work these programs on the idea of restoration, not incarceration. It gets young adults and juveniles back on their feet. It's not necessarily a punishment, but gives kids some structure where it may not have otherwise been in the first place. The Great Plains Restoration Council already has started targeting areas in the Great Plains, for example, Fort Worth Prairie Park up near Dallas, Texas, Galisteo Basin Preserve in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, Ogallala Prairie Preserve Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, Esteban Park, Houston, Texas. The Restoration Council talks about expanding on these locations too, so the spots the GIS maps point out later might be ideal places for this expansion or maybe even completely new programs. The second organization I chose was Northwest Passage, and they work with kids with mental illnesses mostly, and they get them outside using therapy-based approaches. They're dedicated to restoring hope through innovative mental health services for children and families. From its genesis in 1978, Northwest Passage programming is focused on blending traditional mental health treatment with arts and nature-based therapy. It's located in northwestern Wisconsin, and there are a few locations depending on the specific type of therapy needed. And even though Northwest Passage isn't located directly in the Great Plains, this organization can give insights and be an example of how nature-based therapy is used. If groups like this and groups like the Great Plains Restoration Council, or even, for example, nature centers, could get together, this could turn out to be beneficial for everyone and the environment included. So why did I choose these factors? I chose 15 to 19-year-olds, poverty, mental illnesses with a subcategory of disabilities, and then kind of the overarching theme of stigma. Um, and I picked these mostly because 15 and 19-year-olds, mostly because they're more susceptible to peer pressure and stress from school and other big changes that can occur during these times. For example, from a sociology course I'm currently taking, I found out that suicide is high for students around college orientation because there are big changes and they don't know what's expected of them. And there's also more academic pressure. And this kind of fits a common age group for that. There's also many other big changes that go on during this time period. College orientation was just an example. Second criteria I chose was poverty. In the journal article I read by Fiseha Gebremichael, if that's how you pronounce it, from the Journal of Alabama Academy of Sciences, she states that in impoverished areas, crime oftentimes happens in low-income inner cities. They aren't always linked, but in cases of poverty, kids don't attend school. Lack of education is linked with crime, and then if kids that are more prone to crime get involved with activities, they may be less inclined to commit crimes and will have their time filled with productive activities. A third criteria I did was mental illness. Mental illnesses as a result of or leading to poverty, such as depression, can lead to suicide. According to the Suicide Awareness and Voices of Education website, suicide is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds. There's one death by suicide in the U.S. every 12.3 minutes. Depression affects 20 to 25% of Americans ages 18 plus in a given year. Some more numbers from the Canadian Mental Health Association: individuals with work-limiting disabilities are nearly 3 times as likely to be poor and 4 times as likely to be a receipt of social assistance as individuals without a disability. Mental illness and poverty can create a vicious cycle of poverty leading to mental illness and vice versa. This is huge, and these are adolescents that this project might be able to help. It will get them involved with people of all different backgrounds and walks of life that might be in similar situations and give them comfort in knowing they aren't alone and that there are other people they can relate with. This could also be an opportunity to get kids from different walks of life, whether it's mental illness, poverty, etc., together to deplete stigma. These kids will learn how to work with different types of people, get them out of their comfort zones, teach them an appreciation for all types of people to not only benefit themselves but others and the environment too. So my big question is, what areas in the Great Plains would benefit most from the implementation of rewilding and would aid in the rehabilitation of adolescents ages 15 to 19 who are in or near impoverished areas? The data I used was from ecological regions of North America, and then the demographic, business, and institutional layers from Esri Business Analyst. For the first map I made, it's just the Great Plains, just to give an idea of the outline of where it is and what states are a part of it. For my second map, it shows population density in the Great Plains. So you'll notice wilderness is 0 to 2 people per square mile, frontier is 3 to 6 people per square mile, and other is 7 plus people per square mile. And if you notice the east side of the Great Plains, where it's kind of bare, it means that there's 7 plus people per square mile. And this will kind of be reiterated in the next map. So this map shows isolation from institutions and businesses. And as you can see, blue is isolated from businesses and institutions, and red is very heavy with them. So just like that other map where it said 7 plus people were toward the east side, that's where the most businesses are too. It just kind of reiterates that wilderness map. And it'll show later why there might be areas here that are not beneficial for rewilding. This map shows population density ages 15 to 19. Red is a lot of 15 to 19-year-olds, and just like you would kind of expect along the east side where businesses and institutions and stuff are, that's kind of where it's heavy with adolescents. This map shows median household income. Blue is low household income, and it's kind of interesting because even along that east side, there are lower income, even though that's where a lot of institutions and businesses are. But you see more blue toward the west side. And then you might be asking, so where do all these criteria meet to create good areas for the rehabilitation of people and the rewilding of environment? But my last map shows target areas for adolescents in the Buffalo Commons. The red areas in this map show households that make less than 40 grand a year, kind of indicating lower income. There's dense amounts of adolescents 15 to 19 in areas that are wilderness. Many of the places this map found as hotspots prove to be perfect areas for restoration that the Great Plains Restoration Council are focusing on, except the red found by Socorro, New Mexico, and Loretto, Brownsville, Texas. The Great Plains Restoration Council could even expand their work from areas they are already working out of, or other groups could start there. By Tulsa, Oklahoma, and by Kirksville, Missouri, there is also some red that hasn't been addressed. These areas may not be as suitable as the others for restoration, even though they might need it. These areas have too many people per square mile, and there are more businesses in these areas, so you couldn't do like rewilding large scale there. But as you can see, in the black circles are the target areas. So on the left is Socorro, New Mexico, and then on the right, down towards the south side of the country, is Loretto and Brownsville, Texas. So kind of what this data means to this project is that in areas shown in the GIS maps that meet the criteria, those will be targets for the Buffalo Commons restoration that would go on in the Great Plains. The Great Plains Restoration Council seems to be most active in Texas, but they or others could extend this project to Socorro, New Mexico, and or Loretto and Brownsville, Texas. This does not mean the project has to stop here. If it works here, it can work other places in the country that could benefit from it too. So kind of future what's next, if this idea proves to be beneficial for not only adolescents but the environment too, then there might be future consideration for incorporating nature more into schools and getting organizations to join together locally to make this happen beyond the Great Plains. This would be a huge leap in the right direction toward better lives for adolescents and a better planet for everyone. If this can be done in the Great Plains, it can be done anywhere.